Chapter 36. On the Road. 1 month later. Grandpa Larry, Grandpa Wayne. Cass ran to her grandfather's arms, her graduation cap falling off her head. I didn't know you were back. Surprise! Grandpa Larry grinned. We wouldn't miss this for the world. We've got in this morning, said Grandpa Wayne. We didn't even have time to shower. Cass wrinkled her nose. I can tell. They all laughed. Actually, we didn't get very far. Our money ran out, admitted Grandpa Larry cheerfully. Really, after everything you sold in your garage sale, said Cass incredulously. Turns out we're not very good businessmen. Well, I could have told you that, said Cass, who was wondering how much gold coin would take for them to buy a lifetime supply of cruise tickets. Grandpa Wayne looked at Cass. What's different about you? You look taller, more free. Grandpa Larry snapped his fingers. She's not wearing her backpack. Cass shrugged sheepishly. Well, I figured graduation was bound to be such a total disaster that nothing in my backpack would help. As Larry Wayne regaled her with stories, no doubt much exaggerated, about their adventures at sea, Cass's eyes wandered around the soccer field where the rest of her classmates were greeting their friends and relatives. Everyone was very dressed up as if they weren't enough to graduate from middle school. They had skipped all the way to adulthood. It gave Cass a funny feeling like she was looking off a precipice. Yoji was sparring with his little brother while talking to his parents and sister. Was wearing a dark, shiny suit and made him look like a mod British rocker from another era. Max Ernst, who was looking back and forth between his parents like referee in a test match, had tried to smother his spiky hair with some kind of gel, and it kept popping up, and he kept patting it down. As for Cass, she wasn't in a dress, much to her mother's chagrin. She had conceded to a skirt, however, and she had gotten a second manicure this time in a deep green, as a sentiment, she said, but privately she admitted to herself that she'd rather liked the way it looked. Amber, of course, looked the most polished. For her, dressing up was effortless. But she had seemed quite oddly quiet. Rather than chatting and gossiping with Naomi and Veronica, as she normally would, she was standing by her parents' side with her mind evidently elsewhere. Cass was considering Amber's unusual behavior. When she finally saw the person she was seeking, "Excuse me," she said to her grandfathers, "there's somebody I have to talk to." Promising to spend more time with them after the ceremony, Cass ran across the field, glad that she had refused her mother's suggestion of high heels. She found her mother standing under the Mummy's Returns banner, but now a bit tattered, with Albert 3D and Daniel Not Danielle. Daniel Not Danielle's dreads were tied back, exposing the whole of his face for the first time. For a second, Cass couldn't tell him apart from his father. "Hey, Albert 3D, I mean, Professor," said Cass breathlessly, and the professor laughed. "It's Albert 3D is fine. I can't seem to shake it. Even I call him that sometimes," said Daniel Not Danielle. "Well, anyways, I just wanted to say, well, I never said I was sorry. I know I caused you a lot of trouble, and I should never have touched the mummy." And then Albert 3D stopped her. "It's okay, Cass. I know you're sorry, and I'm grateful for finding the mummy, and for, well, a lot of things." He smiled at Cass's mom. "Albert's a forgiving man, and very nice quality," said Cass's mother, smiling. "I'll bet sometimes you wish your mother were more like that, don't you, sweetie?" As her mother spoke, Cass noticed that her mother's hand was grazing Albert 3D's for much longer than one would normally touch a fellow parent's at school. In fact, if Cass had known better, she might have almost thought they were touching was intentionally. Yes, it must be more than pinkies were interlocked. For a second, Cass locked eyes with an equally alarmed Daniel Not Danielle. Was it possible that their parents were having a romance? The idea was too icky for them to contemplate. "Bye," said Cass hurriedly. "It's almost time. We gotta go get our seats." On the other hand, she thought, as she and Danielle scurried away, if her mother had to be involved with someone, There were worse choices than a Nigerian archaeologist. At least with him around, there was a chance they would get to travel. And now I am proud to present the winner of the Book of the Day Reading Challenge, our very own bookworm. Miss Johnson, resplendent in an apple green hat and pantsuit, gestured to the still short but growing boy who was in the front row next to Cass and Yoji. Max Ernest. Grinning from ear to ear, Max Ernest stepped up to the podium and shook Miss Johnson's hand. And then he laid his speech down, looking at the microphone, and took a breath. "Thank you, Principal Johnson," he said formally. "Greetings, parents, teachers, fellow classmates." He had greased his hair back down, but as he spoke it sprang up with its usual spiky state with an almost audible boing. He patted down. For the last few months, his hair sprang up again. There were more than few giggles. He coughed. This was not an auspicious beginning. After his stint on the big stage at Las Vegas, Max Ernest had expected a mere middle school graduation, or, as he thought of it now, a gig, to be no big deal. But looking at all those people who had been characters in a story in his life for the last 8 odd years, he found himself uncontrollably nervous. For the last few months, he began reading again. I've been raking in my brain trying to find the perfect joke to open this speech. Well, I think I came up with something that's going to really, really shock you. The audience cheered nervously. A few teachers gave him a warning look. This was not the occasion for an off-the-collar joke. I'm not going to open with a joke after all. Everyone laughed with relief. See, I told you it would be shocking. Max Ernest looked up at the audience and smiled mischievously. Well, now I've opened with a joke. Now I'm going to tell a joke anyway, but you don't see that coming. No, don't do that, dude. Stop. Just say no. His friends shouted good-naturedly. Kidding. I'm actually going to skip right to the serious part. Actually, down to his speech again. When I was younger, I had a lot of trouble relating with other kids. People who know me know that I didn't always understand my peers, and they didn't understand me. That's a polite way of saying that they thought I was really annoying. We still do, yelled Glove. And that's one of my best friends, said Max Ernest. Sometimes I thought everyone else had a secret sense that I didn't have. Something besides the usual senses of smell, hearing, taste, sight, and touch. A sixth sense that, in other words. But what was that secret sense? I used to wonder, telepathy, seeing dead people, was that what was really happening in our schoolyard all the time, so I didn't know that the other kids were talking about they were seeing ghosts? The audience laughed. Cass and Yoji exchanged looks. The speech was getting a little too close to home. As most of you know, I like to tell jokes and riddles a lot, and I've always been interested in jokes. But I'm not sure I've ever understood why. As I think about it now, I think jokes were my way of trying to learn and acquire that secret sense that other kids had. To me, the sixth sense is not something especially supernatural. It is something that binds us together as people. It makes us human. It's a sense of humor. He paused to make sure he had everyone's attention, and he did. Friends don't have to have a lot of things in common. One of them might like, solar flashlights. Others might like Dago sneakers. He smiled at Cass and Yoji. Cass smiled back, and Yoji gave him a thumbs up. Another might like chocolate, lots of chocolate, and I'm not naming names. Casually, he pulled a chocolate bar out of his coat pocket, unwrapped it, and took a big bite. There were more laughs, the biggest yet. But there's one thing friends usually do have in common, a sense of humor. That doesn't mean that they all find the same things funny. Sometimes they might even laugh at each other. But at the end of the day, friends can always laugh with each other. Cass and Yoji turned to each other and smiled. Their friend was doing great. As they turned back, their hands accidentally brushed. Cass was shocked to find their pinkies interlocking, just as the way her mother and Albert 3Ds had. She froze, the blood rushing to her ears. Masters might have been speechifying about the sense of humor, but it was the sense of touch that was now occupying Cass's attention. After an agonizing moment, she and Yoji pulled away from each other. "Are you still wearing that ring?" whispered Yoji, not looking at her. "No, why?" she whispered back. Not just her ears, but her whole face was bright red with embarrassment. "I just thought I felt a jolt of something. Never mind," said Yoji quickly. "Quiet, lovebirds. Your friend's talking," said Blob from a row behind them. Danielle giggled. "Yeah, show some respect." Mortified Cass and Yoji sat stiffly in their chairs, neither of them able to muster the slightest comeback. Max Ernest, meanwhile, was reaching full stride. The official theme of this speech was supposed to be the secret of success, he said, with a nod towards Miss Johnson. "Well, I don't know if a sense of humor is a secret of success. So far, I haven't made a lot of money as a comedian. In fact, I've been booed off the stage. But life is full of boos, not just for comedians, but it's a sense of humor that gets you through the boos and the blues, too." The audience groaned at the pun. Sorry, I couldn't resist. If you can't see the ridiculous side of things, it's awfully hard to deal with the serious sides. And the sense of humor may not be the secret of success, but in other words, I'm pretty sure that it's the secret of life. Max Ernst glanced at Cass. She shook her head slightly as if to say, "You're skating on thin ice with this secret stuff, buddy." But he could see that she was smiling. "So here we are, about to graduate from middle school," he continued. "We've crossed one bridge and we're about to cross another. Speaking of which, that reminds me of a joke." There were more groans. "No, don't do it. Spare us." Max Ernst laughed. "You don't really think I would tell you, did you? Actually, the joke I'm thinking of is the oldest joke in the book. Why did the chicken cross the road? But all known the answer to get to the other side. But thinking about it, there isn't really an answer. It's a statement of the obvious. And in the sense, it's a statement of the question. That's why it's funny, because there's also why it's mysterious." He paused, slowing himself down. The one piece of advice Miss Johnson had given him was to not to read too quickly. On some level, we don't really know why we do anything. Even less do we know where we are going. What lies on the other side of the road? We don't know until we get there. As the saying goes, it's not the destination, it's the journey. Whatever lies on the other side of the road, even if there's nothing much there at all. I've learned a lot along the way from all of you, and now, like the rest of you, I'm getting out of here, and I'm going to take my act on the road. He pronounced the last word, his voice cracked. It's not much from emotion, I'm afraid, but in the fact that the voices of the boys Max Ernst's age often do. Max Ernst's voice is changing at the very moment he was finding it. "Road," he squeaked out. Nobody laughed at him this time, not much because they were being nice, but because they had tears in their eyes. So did he. "I'll miss you all," said Max Ernst, as he walked up the stage to a standing ovation. Amid the tears and applause, nobody noticed as Amber slipped away from her seat at the edge of the bleachers, least of all her parents, nor did they see her climbing into the limousine that waited just outside the school gates. Miss Mavis welcomed her with barely a nod and then waved the driver with a gloved hand. In silence they drove off in search of a never-setting sun.